Alright, so I am just a few days away from selling some snakes here at a local reptile show here in Denver, Colorado. It's the Denver Repticon. And you may or may not know it, if you're thinking about selling some snakes, there are actually reptile show police at these reptile shows. And they don't really wear a uniform, they don't flash a badge. As a matter of fact, they're not all with the same organization, but several of them can actually kick you out of the shows and ban you from the shows and keep you from coming back. And I kind of wanted to cover a couple of those because I'm coming up to a show, and there's one in particular that I had a violation from at one of my last shows. As a matter of fact, probably the first one is, you'll see it in a lot of the rules and regulations. If you have snakes that are sick, have respiratory infections, or especially if you have snakes with mites, they'll definitely kick you out of the show. As a matter of fact, I just went to the Reptilian Nation here in Colorado, and I was kind of looking around. I know it was a really packed show. I know there's a lot of people in line waiting to get tables at that show. It's pretty much booked pretty full. And when I went to the show, I saw an empty table, and I was thinking, I wonder if someone actually got kicked out of the show. If you have mites on your snakes, they will definitely kick you out of pretty much any show. As a matter of fact, I think in a lot of these reptile shows, they actually have the rules and regulations listed, and a lot of them will say right in the rules, if they catch you with snakes that have snake mites or respiratory infections, they will ask you to leave. So that is definitely, that's pretty much, I'd say the reptile show in that case is probably the people that are running the show. And I'd say probably a year and a half ago, I was vending at a show, and I had this lady come up to my table, and she said, as a matter of fact, I was violating a rule, and I didn't even know it. She came up to me and said, "Excuse me, I'm from the Colorado Department of Agriculture, and your snakes are too big for those display cases on your tables." I thought that was kind of a shocker. I'd never heard that one before. And the funny thing is I was vending a spring show, and I had a lot of snakes from the fall that I brought over to the spring, and I was pretty much stuck. She actually let me sell snakes at the show both days. Didn't kick me out, thank goodness, but she gave me a warning. And as a matter of fact, right after that show, I had to invest probably another $1,500 in some cases that had bigger enclosures for some of those bigger ball pythons. And now I have quite a bit invested in display cases so I can choose my sizes. But kind of what I want to do is I wanted to show you my display cases there from ARS Caging. Really nice display cases. I'll show you how I have them set up and what they look like, and kind of the violation that I had recently at one of these shows. And hopefully, I'm pretty sure all the snakes that I'm going to have at this show will fit into the smaller displays. I don't think I'll have any problems. But if I'm selling at a spring show and carry some of these snakes over to the spring, you definitely need bigger display cases. So let's jump over and check out my displays. Alright, so take a look at this. This is my ARS caging display, and at first glance, it doesn't really look like it's an acrylic display to display snakes at the reptile shows, but it is all completely enclosed, really high quality. And the cool thing I like about this is you can put all your snakes in here, has ventilation on the sides. You can put them in the cases in here. Pretty much what I do is I load them up in the morning, close them all up in this case, and then just bring them on a dolly, bring them right into the show. You don't have to worry about actually putting them in another enclosure and then moving them over. You can put them right in the display cases. And this is really super heavy duty. It has, even all the hardware is really nice. It has like a spring activated handle, and then all the latches are really super heavy duty, really nice. Pretty expensive, and this thing's pretty heavy. I'd say you almost need a back brace to lift this, but let me tell you, these are the bomb. These are definitely worth it. You can go to ARS Caging and get them. I have 8 of them. I have quite a few of these display cases. You can see it's really nice padding on the inside. And these are the display cases. You can get them in multiple sizes. The only thing I really don't like about these is the dividers aren't removable, which is kind of a bummer. I wish you could actually move them and expand the different sizes, but the way they're kind of welded together with this, you know, how they assembled them, you can't really, I'm not sure if you can actually do it with this without having some kind of a different design on here. And every single level has a lock, and I wanted to show you the lock. It has a lock and key. So you put the key in the lock, and then the lock essentially comes down like this. if I can actually work it. And then this comes over and down, and then the top slides open just like that. And it's kind of handy because nobody can get into your display case unless they have the key. And I usually give, you know, everyone behind my table a key if I have multiple people. And the cool thing about this is that every single level works on the same key, and everybody's ARS caging works on the same key. So if I lose my key, I can find someone else in the show that has ARS caging and say, hey, can I use your key to open my display case? And it's pretty handy. It's not really, you know, I'm not really worried about security. It's not like someone's gonna open it up, grab a snake and run with it. It's kind of, you know, you're not really worried about that. And then a lot of times I'll leave this at night and they'll have security 24/7 at the reptile shows, which is really nice. And so I kind of wanted to show you how this sets up. Essentially what I do, let me show you kind of the inside here. I printed these out. Essentially what it is it comes like black on the inside. There's nothing that it comes with. And I printed these out on the printer. These are really nice. Kind of, if the snake goes to the bathroom, I can throw these out. I always have extra at the show. And then these little squares here, this is a QR code that you can scan and it goes right to my YouTube channel. I'm trying to drive some more traffic to my YouTube channel. You can make it go to any link or whatever. And then I have my, you know, my company name, Chris Hardwick Reptiles, all around the sides. And that is, so if someone comes up and takes a picture of one of my snakes, it's kind of free advertising no matter where they put the picture. You know, I kind of have my advertising out there, my YouTube channel and my name right there. And I really encourage people to take pictures. I'm like, yeah, it's like free advertising if you take pictures of my displays. And what kind of the way I do it is this display is really interesting the way it sets up. I kind of want to show you how this sets up if you're interested in getting one of these displays, because the box here actually acts as the tiers for the displays. And you can see this is pretty much my displays from last year. This is how I had the setup. These are the smaller enclosures. They're definitely for smaller hatchlings. If you get too big of hatchlings in here, people can complain and they will bust you if you have too big of a snake in these small enclosures. And what I really like to do is I like to put the prices really big on here and then the description really small, because most people are looking for the budget. They're like, all right, I have 50 bucks in my pocket, what can I afford? And they're just kind of scan through, all right, I see these two snakes, now what are they? And let's compare them and look into them a little bit further. I pretty much go by price first. And if someone's looking for a specific morph, usually it's pretty obvious looking in the case. And then the other thing about these cases that I was kind of regretting at first, and now I really like it, is some of these cases actually have clear on the sides instead of black. So if you kind of look sideways at my case, you really can't see in the cases, but if all these were clear, you could see them pretty much from across the room. You could see all the snakes. And I thought it was kind of nice if you had a really big crowd by your table, that if someone was kind of off to the side and couldn't push up to the table, they could see all your snakes. But kind of on the flip side, if you think about it another way, people keep kind of circling around until the crowd dissipates, and then they come up right in front of your display and they get a really good close look at your snake. So I think it really forces people to come around in front and get a better close-up look. And at that point I'm like, hey, you want to hold a snake? And that's kind of, you know, once they hold a snake and play with it, then it's more interactive and you have a better chance to actually sell something. Not that I'm really pushing my snakes, but I know a lot of people kind of looking for tricks in order to sell some of your snakes. So another thing I wanted to show you is how this display sets up. Pretty much at all these reptile shows, you need a black tablecloth. Sometimes they specify a different color. I actually have a fitted tablecloth that fits over the whole 8-foot table. Some people put like their name on the tablecloth. I don't put my name. But you really need to look at the rules as far as some of the shows, what you're getting into. So this is essentially how it works. I don't know if it'll actually work on this table because this is not a standard 8-foot table. So normally what it would do is it would actually go this way, but this table's not big enough. So I'm going to flip it the other way. And the way this works is you have one level here like this, and then you have like a rubber mat that you put on here to kind of protect that, and then you put another level here, and then you have another rubber mat here, and then put it right here, and the case becomes part of the display. How awesome is that? That is really fantastic. You don't have, you know, a bunch of cases stacked in the corner and you have all your display, your snakes here. So that is really neat. And what I want to do is I want to actually try to put one of my biggest hatchlings in one of these display cases and see how tight it is. I think I'm gonna grab my fire pied up here, which is, actually it's a fire het pied. This is pretty much the biggest snake that I'm gonna have at the show in a few days. Take a look at that beauty. That is a really nice snake. That is a fire 100% het pied. Pretty much the biggest snake that I'm gonna have. And I would say that is probably as big as you want to get. I'd say that is the maximum size of a snake in this enclosure before someone complains and comes over and busts you for having too big of a snake in an enclosure. Actually, my yearlings were a little bit bigger than that, and they were pretty much crammed in there. I'd say if it fills up half of it or a little bit more than half, you're pretty good, but you definitely don't want to fill the whole thing with snake. That, I'd say that is probably borderline as far as what you can put in there. It's pretty much on the edge. I would say it's okay. You don't want to go any bigger than that as far as a snake. So if you're thinking about getting any kind of an acrylic display case, one thing that is really essential that you need is some really good acrylic cleaner. This is what I use, this Novus, and I use special cloths to clean acrylic. And let me tell you, selling reptiles at the show, you'll have all kinds of kids coming up, drooling all over your case and just putting, you know, they sell like cotton candy and everything, and it gets really sticky and messy. As a matter of fact, I actually had one of my snakes, I picked it up at a show, and I was walking around over my case, just kind of holding it, and it peed all over my entire case, and I was there kind of fighting the crowd trying to clean up the mess. So what you really want to do is you really want to stay on top of it, and it doesn't really take much, just a few little spritzes to kind of wet it down, and then go over it like this. You definitely don't want to scratch the acrylic. You want to use the right cleaner, and you want to use the right cloth. And what I do is I clean them really good before I go to the show, and then really just spot clean them throughout the whole show. Make sure they're always really clean. Every time the crowd clears just for a second, I run out there with my cleaner and my cloth and make sure it stays really clean, and it really keeps the fingerprints off so people can see the snakes and it looks really professional. Alright, so it is time for the question of the day. And Cloudy Casca asks, at what weight should you start breeding your female ball pythons? And that is a very good question. I'd say if you ask pretty much anyone, the industry standard, most people will tell you don't breed your females until they reach 1,500 grams. And I would say it's kind of a double-edged sword breeding at 1,500 grams, because if you do get a clutch of eggs, I'd say you probably will get maybe 6 eggs from that female. I bred a clown female last year, got 6 eggs, and the problem is after you pair them up, they go on a really long breeding fast, sometimes for 6 or 7 months, and then when they lay eggs, sometimes they'll fast a little bit after that, and then when they start eating, you're kind of chasing the time before you pair them up again. So essentially you're trying to get enough weight back on them to bring them up to 1,500 grams to breed them on the next season. And the problem is a lot of times you never really get your snake beyond the 1,500 grams, or it takes quite a few years to start putting on the weight. Versus if you didn't breed that female, say for maybe 5 or 6 years, you got it up to maybe 4,000 or 5,000 grams, you got a really big female. I have one big female, it's 5,000 grams. She'll lay a clutch of 15 eggs. So you see, you're kind of losing out at the beginning by waiting, but you really catch up in the end by larger clutches of eggs. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.